I'm standing on what used to be my dock at Brightwater Lake, shoes grinding into blackened splinters, watching the charred skeleton of my father's sailboat rock gently against the pilings. And in that gray-blue light right before sunrise, I know one thing with a kind of cold, terrifying clarity. This wasn't an accident. This was a message from the Silver Ridge Landing Association, from their little empire ruled by HOA President Monica Fairchild, and they really thought this would break me. The boat was called the Sea Whisper, a tired old 40-foot cruiser when my dad dragged her home, and his last big project before cancer took him. After he died, restoring her became my own way of breathing again. So for 3 years I sanded every inch by hand, replaced the rigging, rebuilt the engine, and when I finally retired from the Coast Guard after 28 years of search and rescue, I bought this small cabin on Brightwater Lake, just outside the gates of Silver Ridge Landing, because all I wanted was quiet water, a dock, a boat, and enough space to remember who I was when I wasn't pulling people out of storms. Technically, my property predates the HOA. My little strip of shoreline sits on its own deed recorded long before Silver Ridge Landing was even platted, but the association still claims control over common waterways, which in Monica's mouth becomes this elastic weapon she can stretch as far as she likes. So 6 months before the fire, I get this certified letter telling me my private dock allegedly sticks 2 feet into the Community Navigation Channel, and that if I don't shorten it by spring, I'll be paying a $5,000 fine. And instead of rolling over, I hire a surveyor, spend $800 I really didn't want to spend, and the guy proves, in black ink and GPS coordinates, that my dock sits exactly where my 1990s permits say it should. I take all of that, maps, permits, survey report, to a board meeting in the Silver Ridge Landing clubhouse, the fluorescent lights buzzing, the coffee burnt, and there's Monica Fairchild at the center of the table, that frozen tennis captain smile plastered on her face, flanked by Treasurer Denise Carter, her sister, and Vice President Doug Keller, her golf buddy. And when I calmly lay out the facts, she taps a little gavel, says, "The board will review this," doesn't even glance at the papers. And I know, right then, that this was never about measurements. This is about power and money and one woman who thinks the lake, the houses, the sky itself belong to her. The retaliation starts almost immediately. Tow trucks called on my pickup when it's parked perfectly legal, anonymous complaints to the county about unpermitted structures on my property, violation notes about unsightly equipment, when I set out sawhorses to work on a coffee table. And at the 4th of July party, I overhear Monica laughing with some developer by the grill, saying once she clears that eyesore dock, those lots will be perfect for a tear-down rebuild. And when I realize the eyesore she's talking about is my home, my father's boat, my life, something in me clicks into a different gear. A month later, I come back from visiting my daughter Lena in Raleigh, walk down to check on the Sea Whisper, and the hull is covered in neon orange spray paint, welfare sailor on one side, go home on the other, the paint still tacky, fumes mixing with the lake smell, and that cold, steady anger settles in my chest, not the kind that makes you swing blindly, but the kind that makes you plan. The deputy, Sergeant Ryan Blake from the county sheriff's office, ex-Marine, good man, takes the report, looks at the locked marina gate, the security code nobody's kids would have, and when I say I'm thinking HOA, he doesn't argue. He just tells me quietly to get cameras, document everything, and maybe, just maybe, get a lawyer. That night, instead of just stewing, I remember something from my divorce, how my attorney explained sunshine laws, public records, the way certain nonprofits and HOAs have to cough up financials if you ask the right way. So I sit at my kitchen table, buy a cheap domain, spin up a bare-bones blog called silverridgewatch.com, and I start posting. Not rants, not conspiracy, just receipts. First, the survey that proves my dock is legal, side by side with the bogus violation letter. Then photos of Monica's son's jacked-up truck parked in their driveway in direct violation of the same rules she's used to fine half the neighborhood. And then, after a couple of stubborn weeks wrestling with the county clerk's office, I upload the real bombshell. Invoices showing the HOA has paid $40,000+ to Fairchild Realty Group, Monica's own brokerage, for consulting services. While she simultaneously collects a stipend as president, her sister Denise signs the checks, and the board approves it all in closed session. When I hit publish on those scans, I know there's no going back. And sure enough, within days the site is everywhere, circulating in Facebook groups, passed around in text chains, memes of Monica's white Lexus with captions about loving your lake fees. And in return, I get a thick envelope from a downtown firm representing the Silver Ridge Landing Association, full of legal threats telling me to shut down the site, pay 10 grand for their trouble, sign a non-disclosure, and disappear. I scan that letter, post it too, and send back a single-page response, polite, but crystal clear, that I look forward to discovery, and that truth is a complete defense. And when Monica sees the cameras I mount on my dock, sees that I'm not folding, I can feel, like the shift in air before a storm, that she's going to do something stupid. I just don't know yet how far she's willing to go. The explosion comes at 2:40 in the morning, not Hollywood huge, but big enough that the windows rattle and my body, trained by decades of emergency calls, goes from deep sleep to full alert in half a second. And before I'm even fully conscious, the smell hits, gasoline and burning fiberglass. And when I sprint outside, barefoot, the Sea Whisper is a screaming pillar of fire at the end of my dock. Flames are towering into the night. The mast snaps like a bone and crashes into the lake with a hiss. Neighbors spill out in pajamas. Someone calls 911. But by the time the fire trucks get their hoses in place, my father's boat is already a sagging, blackened shell, smoke drifting low over the water like a dirty fog. The fire marshal, a tired man with soot on his boots, walks the scene at sunrise, looks at my security footage, 2 hoodies, a gas can, a dark sedan with its lights off, and says, quietly what I already know, this is textbook arson. Insurance sends an adjuster who explains, with sympathetic eyes and corporate language, that without a criminal conviction it's a suspicious fire, and they'll only pay the depreciated hull value, $22,000 for a boat worth triple that. And while I'm still swallowing that insult, President Monica Fairchild posts in the HOA group calling it a tragic accident, reminding everyone to store flammables properly, turning my father's funeral pyre into a safety bulletin. Friends try to help. Isabel Cruz, a landscaper Monica once fined 2 grand over hedge height, starts a fundraiser. Neighbors chip in. But Monica reports the campaign as fraud, and the platform freezes the funds. And suddenly people who used to wave now look away, because they're afraid of the letters, the fines, the social shunning she can unleash with a click. For a couple of days I genuinely consider packing up, moving in with Lena in Raleigh, starting over somewhere without a board. But while I'm cleaning out the garage, I find an old Coast Guard manual my father gave me, dog-eared and stained, and on the first page, in his handwriting, there's that line, "Calm seas never made a skilled sailor." And something in me hardens. If I can't get justice for the boat, I can make sure the person who lit the match loses everything she burned it for. So I call an old shipmate, Jared Stein, who left the service years ago and now works as a forensic accountant, a quiet numbers guy whose boy I once dragged out of a capsized fishing boat in a winter squall. When I tell him what's been happening, he doesn't hesitate, just says, "Send me every document you can get, bank statements, vendor lists, bylaws, all of it. We'll see what your queen of the cul-de-sac is hiding." While Jared dives into the numbers from his office across the state, I attack the problem from the legal side, camped out at the library, plowing through state HOA statutes, our own Silver Ridge Landing bylaws, Robert's rules, case law on fiduciary duty. Buried in meeting minutes, I spot the first crack, board elections that were really pre-filled proxy sheets Monica carried door to door, blank lines where names should go. No real ballots. Number 30-day notices, meaning technically the board hasn't been legally elected for years. I draft a recall petition, need signatures from 20% of owners to force a special election. And at first it's slow, knocks at doors answered by people who glance over my shoulder like Monica might be hiding in the azaleas, whisper that they can't get involved, and close the door. But then Isabel Cruz shows up on my porch with a thermos of cinnamon coffee and a list of families she says are ready, especially the ones who've been targeted for non-standard landscaping that just happens to include vegetable gardens and cultural plants. And in 11 days we cross the threshold. When the petition hits the HOA office, Monica's mask slips. She calls me in a voice shaking with barely suppressed rage, telling me I have no idea what I've started, and the very next morning she schedules an emergency plumbing assessment, tries to ram through an $80,000 special fee for catastrophic clubhouse repairs that, When I go check in person, clearly don't exist. No leaks, no damage. Just a convenient excuse to drain the reserve fund before anyone can look too closely. That's when Jared Stein calls, voice buzzing through the speaker like electricity, and tells me he's found a gold mine of stupidity. A company called HOA Point Services LLC that's been paid over $120,000 for vague property consulting. A company with no website, no staff, no address beyond a post office box, registered to someone named Monica Harrington, Monica's maiden name, plus inflated invoices to Fairchild Realty Group, plus a legal board stipends payable to Monica, Denise, and Doug with no owner vote, plus false tax filings underreporting income. By the time we add it all up, nearly $200,000 has gone sideways into Monica's pockets and those of her loyal lieutenants. So with Jared's reports in hand, I file complaints with the state's Corporate Enforcement Office, the Consumer Protection Division, and the IRS, and I send Pioneer Bank, where the HOA keeps its accounts, a certified letter documenting suspected fraud. Within days, the accounts are frozen for investigation, checks bounce, contractors start calling, and a few mornings later, a white BMW pulls into my driveway, and a very different Monica Fairchild steps out. No makeup, hair pulled back, expensive yoga pants streaked with something that looks like last night's dinner, begging me on my porch to call it off, promising to resign, to move, to do anything if I just make the bank and the state go away. I think of the sea whisper, of my dock blazing against the dark water, of the way she laughed about my eyesore with that developer, and for once I don't soften. I simply tell her she should have thought of mercy before she lit a match, close my door, and walk back to my kitchen table, where Isabel, Sergeant Ryan Blake, retired paralegal Donna Hale, and Jared on a laptop screen are waiting to launch what Donna jokingly names Operation Clean Sweep. We hit from all sides at once. Donna sends personal demand letters to each board member warning them they can be held individually liable for breaches of fiduciary duty, dangling the carrot of leniency for whoever flips first. Jared escalates the financial reports to an assistant attorney general named Rachel Park, who oversees HOA fraud cases. Sergeant Blake quietly loops in the State Bureau of Investigation about the arson and Monica's son Logan Fairchild, whose juvenile record includes a couple of suspicious fires, and Isabel and I book the community hall, send press invites, plan a town hall-style reckoning that will be live-streamed and impossible to spin. Cornered animals lash out, and Monica lashes out hard. She posts a fake email in the HOA group that looks like it's from me, full of vague threats, tries to paint me as an unstable veteran, floods Google with bogus one-star reviews for a non-existent dock business in my name. Neighbors start hearing whispers that I burn my own boat for insurance money, my truck tires get slashed, Isabel's work van gets tagged with a slur. But at the same time, Denise Carter comes apart, shows up at Donna's place, white-knuckled and trembling, bringing with her secret recordings of board meetings and an email from Monica sent 2 days before the fire that says, "Code the HOA Point payments as landscaping and don't worry about the boat situation, I'll handle that personally." When the State Bureau of Investigation finds gasoline residue in Logan's car and text messages from his mother telling him to make the boat problem go away, make it look like an accident, when Assistant AG Rachel Park calls to say felony embezzlement, tax fraud, and arson charges are being drafted, I realize that our town hall won't be the start of this fight. It's going to be the public funeral for Monica's little kingdom. On the night of the meeting, the main hall at the Silver Ridge Community Center is beyond capacity. Every plastic chair filled, people lining the walls, local news cameras in the back, bloggers live streaming on their phones, and in the second-to-last row, with 2 empty seats on either side of her like a force field, sits Monica Fairchild, thinner, paler, dressed in a dark suit that looks like armor that no longer fits. I start with the boat, because that's where this became personal. Project a photo of the sea whisper before the fire, my dad on the deck in 1989, grinning, then the shot of the charred wreckage. The mast snapped into the water, and I walk the room through the timeline, the bogus violation, the graffiti, the arson call, and then I pivot, gently but firmly, to the money, because that's where this became everyone's story. Slide after slide goes up on the screen. The payments to HOA Point Services LLC, the shell company in Monica Harrington's name, the consulting fees to Fairchild Realty Group at triple market rate, the illegal stipends, the falsified tax returns, and as I speak, Assistant AG Rachel Park, sitting near the front, stands to confirm that her office has completed an audit, that charges are being filed, that seized assets, including a condo in Seabreeze Bay and a certain white Lexus, will be used to reimburse the association. Someone calls out, "Did she burn his boat too?" And Park chooses her words carefully, explaining that Logan Fairchild has been arrested, that he's cooperating, that the evidence shows he acted at the direction of another party. And all the oxygen in the room seems to rush toward the back row where Monica sits. She explodes, of course, stands up, claims it's a witch hunt, accuses me of fraud, tries to sob about all she's given to Silver Ridge Landing. But nobody claps, nobody comforts her, and when she finally flees the room, heels clicking too loud on the tile, the door shutting behind her echoes like the end of a rain. The homeowners vote, right there under the fluorescent lights, on dissolving the current board, on appointing an interim slate with Isabel as president and Donna as treasurer, on hiring an independent management company, on suing Monica, Denise, and Doug personally for every dollar taken plus legal fees. And his hands go up in a forest of anger and relief. I feel, for the first time since the fire, that the lake is ours again, not hers. The legal machine doesn't move overnight, but it does move. Within weeks, the Silver Ridge Landing Association recovers frozen funds. Pioneer Bank cooperates. Assistant AG Park files a thick stack of charges: embezzlement, fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy to commit arson, insurance fraud. And months later, I find myself on a witness stand in a county courthouse, telling 12 strangers how a woman with a title and a gate code decided to torch a dead man's sailboat rather than admit she was wrong. Denise testifies about the shell company and the doctored minutes. Logan testifies about the late-night texts and the gas can. Jared and Donna lay out the numbers and the law. And when the jury comes back guilty on almost every count, and the judge sentences Monica Fairchild to 7 years in state prison, restitution to the HOA, and to me for the Sea Whisper, and a permanent ban from serving on any board that handles other people's money, I don't feel triumphant exactly. I feel like something heavy has finally been set down. The condo and the Lexus get sold. The proceeds go into a recovery fund. Dues get lowered. Roads get resurfaced. A new playground goes up near the clubhouse. And with what's left, the new board creates the Sea Whisper Scholarship. $5,000 a year for any local kid going into maritime service, Coast Guard, fishing, ship design, anything that ties them to the water. And when my daughter Lena and I hand the first check to a shy teenager headed to boot camp, I feel my father in the room surely as if he'd just stepped in from the dock. In spring, I rebuild that dock myself, slower this time. Thicker pilings, stainless hardware, carve my dad's initials into the corner post when I'm done. I don't rush to buy a new boat. I teach on borrowed ones from the yacht club instead, and on quiet evenings I sit on the edge of my little pier at Brightwater Lake with a beer, listening to kids' laughter drift across the water, knowing that the woman who tried to scare me off this shore is watching the seasons change through bars. Every now and then I get emails from people in other states, Arizona, Florida, Texas, who've read about a retired coastie who froze his HOA's accounts and sent the president to prison, and they ask if it was worth it, the stress, the time, the risk, and I think about my burned dock, my rebuilt one, the scholarship, the kids learning to read the wind, and I tell them yes, but only if you're ready to see it through, because bullies in suits count on you getting tired first. So that's my story, and if you're watching this on my channel, I'll ask you what I ask everyone at the end. When someone in power crosses the line this far, when they destroy property, steal from their neighbors, weaponize fear to stay in charge, what does justice look like to you? Is prison and restitution enough? Or should there be a different kind of accountability for people who turn a community into their personal kingdom? And if you were in my shoes, standing on that burned-out dock with smoke still rising off the water, what would you have done?